Imagine this. You're 7 months pregnant, just about to relax on a long flight, when you discover a stranger has taken your seat. He refuses to move, and the flight crew ignores you. What would you do in this situation? But here's the shocker. This flight takes a twist you won't believe, and one man's selfishness leads to a moment of justice that will leave you speechless. Stay tuned till the end to see how this unbelievable story unfolds. Believe me, you'll love the ending. Before we dive into this intense story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. If you're rooting for justice, smash that like button and share this video. It helps us bring more unbelievable stories your way. It was supposed to be a peaceful flight for Maria, the kind of quiet escape she needed before the arrival of her baby. With her pregnancy nearing its final stretch, she had been looking forward to the comfort of the business class seat and the calm of the journey. She had even planned to catch up on some much-needed rest before the whirlwind of family visits and baby preparations began. But as she walked down the aisle toward her seat, her heart sank. There, in her assigned seat, sat a tall man dressed in a sharp black suit. His dark sunglasses were perched on his nose, and his phone was firmly in hand as he scrolled through it absent-mindedly. He was so engrossed in his screen that he didn't even notice Maria standing there, her ticket in hand, looking perplexed. She glanced at the number above the seat and then down at her ticket again. Yes, this was her seat. "Excuse me, that's my seat," Maria said, trying to keep her voice steady. She gestured to the ticket in her hand, pointing to the seat number. She wasn't sure if it was the pregnancy hormones or just sheer exhaustion, but she wasn't in the mood for confrontation. She just wanted to sit down. The man looked up, his gaze fleeting and indifferent. He didn't even give her the courtesy of standing up. Instead, he slowly tilted his head back and responded with a dismissive wave. "Oh, I don't think so. This seat looks better for me." His tone was smooth, but it oozed with arrogance. There was no apology, no recognition that he might have made a mistake. It was clear to Maria that this man wasn't going to move voluntarily. A mix of frustration and disbelief swept over her. Maria had always been calm and patient, but this was different. She was 7 months pregnant and had been looking forward to this flight to rest. Now, she was stuck in an uncomfortable situation with no immediate solution in sight. She took a deep breath and tried again, this time with more authority. "Please, this is my assigned seat," she insisted, trying to stay as composed as possible. "I need to sit down." The man didn't budge. Instead, he stretched his legs wide, extending them across the entire seat, and made himself even more comfortable. His body language was a clear signal that he didn't care about her discomfort, or anyone else's for that matter. The aisle was blocked, and Maria could hardly move past him. Passengers around her glanced up, but no one intervened. They all seemed to look away, unwilling to get involved. The flight attendant was nowhere to be seen, and Maria's heart sank further. She was left standing there, powerless, unsure of what to do next. Was this really happening? Why did she have to be in this situation, of all times, just before her baby's arrival? She was trapped between a selfish man and an indifferent crowd, with no one willing to help. Maria, despite feeling the heavy weight of frustration building inside her, remained calm on the outside. She had been trained to keep her composure, especially in stressful situations. But as her growing belly made her feel more and more uncomfortable, she could feel the patience inside her slipping away. She wasn't used to confronting people, but the sheer disrespect of this man pushed her to take a firmer stand. "This is really not okay," Maria said, her voice trembling slightly as the words left her mouth. There was no mistaking the frustration in her tone now. She had asked politely twice and had been met with nothing but disregard. She wasn't asking for special treatment, just a basic acknowledgement of her assigned seat. But as the man looked at her with an air of indifference, it felt as if her words were falling on deaf ears. The man stared at her for a moment, unblinking, before shaking his head in dismissal. His expression didn't change. His smugness only deepened. "This is my spot now. Go find another seat." His tone was final, as though he had decided the matter without any further discussion. He seemed utterly unconcerned with her plight, as though her pregnancy and discomfort didn't even register in his mind. Maria stood there, her eyes stinging with the sharp sting of humiliation. She had never been the type to cause a scene, but now she felt helpless and exposed. The aisle was crowded with people looking on, and no one made a move to help. It was as if she were invisible, or worse, a nuisance to be ignored. She could feel her stomach tightening in both physical discomfort and the emotional weight of the situation. She just wanted to sit, just wanted some relief, and yet here she was standing, waiting for someone to take action. The air around her seemed to grow thick with tension. The passengers seated around her remained silent, their eyes shifting uncomfortably as the standoff stretched on. Her frustration reached a boiling point. Was this really happening? She thought to herself, why isn't anyone helping me? Why isn't anyone standing up for me? Just as Maria was about to speak again, to demand that the man get out of her seat, a voice suddenly interrupted the charged silence. Is there a problem here? It was the flight attendant. Maria's relief was immediate, but it quickly turned to disappointment when she saw the attendant's hesitant stance. The woman didn't rush to her aid or show any clear signs of empathy. Instead, she appeared uncertain, almost apologetic. Maria explained the situation quickly, her voice shaking from both anger and exhaustion. She told the attendant that the man was refusing to vacate her seat and that she was pregnant and in need of a place to sit. But instead of helping her resolve the issue, the flight attendant looked uncomfortable and, almost reluctantly, said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're fully booked. Maybe you can sit in the back." Her voice was apologetic, but it didn't offer any real solution. It was a suggestion to make do, to simply accept the situation as it was. Maria was taken aback. Was she really being told to sit at the back of the plane, as if her needs didn't matter? Her stomach churned, not from the pregnancy, but from the sting of being ignored. Was this how pregnant women were treated? The thought haunted her. She wasn't just another passenger. She wasn't just asking for a favor. She was a paying customer, a mother-to-be, and yet it felt as though she was being dismissed like an inconvenience. The flight attendant's response only made the situation worse, leaving Maria feeling more isolated than ever. The humiliation of being ignored in such a blatant way weighed heavily on her, and for a moment, she felt completely powerless. How much longer would this go on? Would anyone step up to help her? Or would she just be forced to accept this treatment without question? The tension in her chest tightened even further, and it felt like the walls were closing in. Maria stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest as the voice echoed throughout the cabin. The calm, authoritative tone seemed to carry a weight of authority that commanded everyone's attention. "Maria, this is Captain Jackson. I'm going to need you to hold on for a second." For a split second, Maria didn't register what was happening. It was as if time had slowed down and the world around her had gone quiet. She turned her head slowly, as if to check if the voice had come from somewhere nearby. Captain Jackson? Her mind raced. She had been trying so hard to keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband while he was on duty. She didn't want to worry him. The last thing she had wanted was for him to feel distracted or stressed while piloting a flight. So she had kept her condition quiet, even though it weighed heavily on her. Now it was all out in the open. As the words sank in, Maria's heart dropped. How had he known? Had he been watching from the cockpit the entire time? How could he have seen everything unfold? The moment the captain's voice rang through the air, the entire cabin seemed to still. A hushed silence fell over the passengers, and the mood shifted instantly. Maria's stomach flipped. She could feel the eyes of every person in the cabin turning toward her, some with surprise, others with curiosity. She realized that no one had known she was the wife of the captain until now. Her breath caught in her throat as the next words came through the PA system, echoing with even more authority. "I'm Captain Jackson, and I'm in command of this flight," he said, his voice steady and unyielding. "I've been informed of a situation involving my wife. I'll be taking control of this flight now." The passengers were stunned. Whispers spread like wildfire as they exchanged glances. A pregnant woman, calmly standing in the aisle, had just been recognized as the wife of the pilot. The dynamics of the situation shifted instantly. What had started as a simple conflict between a passenger and a seat thief had now escalated into something entirely unexpected. Maria's mind raced. She had never anticipated anything like this. How was it possible that her husband was in control of the entire situation, and that too, without her knowing he was the one at the helm? As the announcement continued, Maria's heart raced. Her emotions were a mix of relief, surprise, and a deep sense of gratitude. She felt both comforted and overwhelmed by the fact that her husband had noticed what was happening and was stepping in to make sure she was okay. But what would happen next? What would he do? She barely had time to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling within her before the situation took an unexpected turn. The man who had taken her seat and caused all this trouble was now fully aware of who Maria was. And soon, the entire plane would know that the captain wasn't just an authority figure in the air. He was her husband, and he wasn't about to let anyone disrespect his wife. Maria could only stand there, her mind spinning, as she waited for her husband's next move. In a moment that stunned everyone aboard, the plane began to descend rapidly. The sudden shift in altitude was so unexpected that passengers were jolted in their seats, some clutching their armrests in confusion. There was no warning, no hint of what was coming. The sound of the engines whirring differently signaled to everyone that something serious was happening. Maria's heart pounded as she realized the gravity of the situation. She couldn't understand how everything had escalated so quickly. Her husband's commanding voice filled the cabin once again, echoing over the PA system with an undeniable sense of authority. "I'm making an emergency landing," Captain Jackson's voice boomed, clear and unwavering. "This flight is going to stop right here." A collective gasp spread through the cabin. Passengers leaned forward, trying to make sense of the announcement. Was it some sort of joke? An overreaction? Some looked out the windows, squinting into the distance as the ground below began to grow larger. The quick descent, while not yet alarming, left a palpable sense of tension in the air. Others exchanged looks of disbelief, murmuring in shock. Could he really do that? Was a question on everyone's mind. Maria could feel her heart race in her chest, a mix of confusion and relief coursing through her. What was happening? Why was the plane descending so suddenly? Was this an emergency? The confusion wasn't just her own. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath as the reality of what was happening began to sink in. Maria glanced toward the man who had taken her seat. The arrogance that had once been so evident on his face was now gone. He sat rigid in his seat, his earlier bravado slipping away as the plane began to lose altitude. He shot a nervous glance down the aisle, realizing that all eyes were on him now. His discomfort was palpable, and for the first time since the whole ordeal began, Maria saw him flinch. The once confident man, who had so easily dismissed her, was now crumbling under the weight of the attention. He muttered an apology under his breath, but the damage had already been done. His casual disregard for her comfort and his unwillingness to budge from her seat had led to this moment, where the captain was forced to take control. Maria watched him nervously fidget in his seat, realizing that his selfish actions had forced the hand of her husband, the pilot. He had caused more than just discomfort. He had triggered an emergency situation. His behavior had taken this flight from a simple misunderstanding to something far more serious. And now, as the plane continued its descent, it was clear that no one on board would forget what had just happened. The entire plane was now aware of the consequences of the man's actions. The tension in the air was almost tangible, as everyone silently wondered what would come next. Would this be the end of the journey, or would Maria's husband, the captain, make sure that justice was served? As the plane's wheels made contact with the runway, Maria's heart pounded in her chest, still processing everything that had just transpired. The abrupt descent, the sudden announcement from the captain, and the chaos that followed. It was all a blur. But now, as the plane slowed to a stop, a sense of disbelief settled over her. Could this really have happened? Had her husband, Captain Jackson, actually made an emergency landing to ensure her safety and dignity? The moment the aircraft doors opened, Maria was greeted by the sight of uniformed authorities waiting on the tarmac. They quickly approached the man who had taken her seat, escorting him off the plane in silence. His posture had changed completely. No longer confident, he walked with his head down, the weight of the situation finally catching up to him. His arrogance had vanished in an instant, replaced by shame. Maria watched him disappear into the distance, his actions leading to the very thing he had tried to avoid: consequences. As she made her way down the aisle toward the gate, her eyes scanned the crowd until they met her husband's. Captain Jackson stood tall, waiting for her. When their gazes locked, his expression softened, a tenderness filling his eyes. She could see the concern that had been there from the moment he had spoken over the intercom. Maria's legs felt weak as she walked toward him, the emotional weight of the ordeal crashing down on her. Her husband opened his arms, and she moved into his embrace, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. He held her tightly, the reassurance she needed flowing from his touch. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," he whispered in her ear. "But I couldn't stand by and let anyone treat you like that. Not when you're carrying our child." Maria closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had been overwhelmed with fear and discomfort, but now, in his arms, she felt safe. It had all felt like a nightmare, but his intervention had turned it into something much more. He hadn't just protected her, he had stood up for their family. "I'm grateful," Maria said, her voice shaky but filled with sincerity. "You didn't just protect me. You protected all of us. Thank you." Her words, simple as they were, carried so much weight. She wasn't just thanking him for what he had done. She was thanking him for the love and protection he had always provided, even in the most unexpected of circumstances. His actions had reassured her in a way she hadn't anticipated, and for the first time during the entire ordeal, Maria felt a profound sense of gratitude for the strength and bond they shared. As they left the airport together, Maria couldn't help but reflect on the strange turn of events. She had gone from feeling helpless and alone to feeling empowered and supported. Her husband's intervention had saved her from humiliation and discomfort, but more than that, it had reminded her of something powerful. She was never alone. With him by her side, she could face anything. The story teaches us the importance of standing up for what's right, as shown by Captain Jackson's decisive action to protect his wife, Maria. It highlights the value of empathy and support in relationships, emphasizing how being there for our loved ones can make a significant difference. The captain's actions also remind us that sometimes actions speak louder than words, especially in challenging situations. Additionally, the story underscores the consequences of disrespect, as seen in the man who stole Maria's seat. Lastly, it shows that with a strong support system, we are never alone in tough times, and having someone by our side can help us overcome any challenge. If you love this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another jaw-dropping moment. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can keep bringing you stories that matter.